Hey everyone, so at the end of the last video, I mentioned possibly creating a report so as that the results of this query will have some structure, because right now, if I open up the form for the report and I choose what the criteria is and I run the query, this is just a spreadsheet. They call it datasheet view, but it's effectively a spreadsheet. It has columns, has rows, has records. Okay. This isn't very user friendly. So even though I'm not a big advocate of reports within my Microsoft Access, they do have a place. And just because I don't like something doesn't mean other people shouldn't like it. So I'm going to show you how to create a report where a query is the data source. And like I said, I personally find reports to have the primary benefit of doing internal monitoring. So again, maybe you're looking to see how many records of a certain type were created. Maybe you're looking at transactional records. Maybe you're looking at incomplete records. I find it for more internal monitoring as opposed to external reporting. Your external reporting, again, would probably just be an export of a table or the export of a query result. And then externally, it is sliced and diced in Excel or whatever Office application you want to use. So we are going to create a report, but there's not a whole lot of information in this table. We've got two records. So what we're going to do, we are going to import a couple more records, and that will let us show you another function. And that is you have the ability to import external data, because right now we've done manual data entry. And when I say manual data entry, I mean one record at a time, one field at a time. We're going to show you how to import an entire document. Now, there's not a lot to the document. It's just a text document and a few things I want to point out. So the first row are going to be used as the column names. This is vital, and we'll cover this. And then any row after that will be the actual records that are being added to the table. So we're going to add Barry, Claire, and Chris to this table. That way, when we run the report, we've got a little bit more to look at. Okay. I do want to point out something, and this is intentional. If you notice, EE first name does not match EE first name. This has underscores. It makes all the difference. It is not an exact text match, and that's going to create a problem, which is good because I'm going to show you how to get past that problem. So I'm going to show you how you can both import an external document and modify the name of the fields so as that it matches a pre-existing table. So let's go ahead and close this table. And we're going to go up to external data. We go to new data source, from file, and text file, because it matters which one you choose. Excel is literally that, an Excel spreadsheet, but text file is just a TXT file. I'm going to pause when I navigate. No sense watching me fumble around my hard drive. And there we go. It's selected. It's ees.txt. So ees.txt. And then what we're going to do, we have several choices. Import the source data into a new table. Now, if you're doing that, that means that you don't have a table yet because you're going to create a new table. We already have a table, and this is the more challenging because if you're creating a new table, you could just use whatever that document is using as the column names. But we have pre-existing column names and we have a pre-existing table, so it's a little bit more challenging, it's a little bit more complex, and so that's why I want to show it to you. So yes, you could just create a whole new table and just use the column names as they exist in the document. But instead, we are going to choose append a copy of the records to the table. And we only have one table, so only one table shows up. If you have multiple tables, you need to choose the corresponding one. We click on OK, and now you get a preview of the data. So you see each row, and at the moment, as you can see, it's treating this all as data, which isn't necessarily correct. In this case, it's wrong because the top row is actually going to be the column names, but that option will show up in a few seconds. So first, it's saying, how are you separating these values? Are they delimited? In other words, do you have some kind of character used to separate them? And the answer is yes, that's what we're doing. We're using, as you can see, commas. You could use a fixed width. We're not using that. And I don't know if really anyone does, but it is an option. But generally speaking, you're going to have a delimiter. You're going to have something separating the names. And if you notice over here, you have a comma and then another comma. That's because we want there to be a blank value for that column. You need to still acknowledge that there is a column there. In that case, it's the EE term date. Okay, so like we said, not everyone's going to have a terminated date. Your active employees aren't going to have a terminated date. So you still need to accommodate for that. So there are commas indicating that there's a field that you are skipping. So we click on next. And now it says choose the delimiter. Well, it identified comma as the delimiter. And so what happens, it replaces the comma delimiter with these vertical lines to indicate that this is how it's going to break up. So you're going to want to look at this to make sure it's correct. And sure enough, like I said, EE term date is shown as blank. That's absolutely perfect because you saw those consecutive commas indicating that there is no value for that field for that record. Okay, so we got Barry, we got Claire, and we have Chris. Now we're going to click on this. First row contains fields. If you do not do that, then this will be treated as a record. Well, we don't want a record called EE first name. EE first name is not an employee. That's a column. So you're going to click on first row contains field names if you have that. If you don't have that, then you wouldn't do that. But in this case, we do have field names baked right into the first row of this document. So we're going to choose first row contains field names. Then we click on advanced. Why? Because this doesn't match. If we try to import this, we would actually get an error and it says can't import it. So what do? Click on advanced. And what I can do now is I can modify the name of that field because I've identified the first row as the field names. So I can say what the corresponding field name should be. As we said, it should be EE underscore first underscore name. So I can actually modify the name of the field and now it can map it properly. It couldn't map it properly and the whole thing would fail. So we can indeed change what field we want that to correspond to. As you notice, you can also skip fields. Say there is an extra field that you don't need. Say there was whatever EE pay rate and you don't have pay rate in this table, well, you could just skip it. Okay. In this case, we want all these because I specifically made this this document, this text file, to match the spreadsheet with that one exception so I could demonstrate that exception. But in this case, we don't have any extra fields. We want to use every field. We don't want to skip anything. Everything else is the same. Some of it is a retread. We already said it's delimited. What's the delimiter? That kind of thing. This is the main option that we get by going into advanced, the fact that we can modify what field it gets mapped to. That's why exact matching is important. If it doesn't match, you can come in here and say what it should be. So we change EE first name to EE underscore first underscore name. Now it exactly matches that corresponding field. So we click on OK. And as you can see, it changes it. So it looks like there's spaces, but there's actually an underscore. You just can't tell because of this line. You could do a text qualifier. We don't need one here. If you're using a different delimiter, like sometimes a pipe is used. So that is the symbol that is above the shift key on the right. It's next to the backslash. If you hold shift, like for instance, I'll just do this. We'll go back. That would be the pipe. We're not going to use that though. And it's just giving me the error since we made a change. Yep, we understand. Comma. So again, I was just showing you that so you could see how you would do a pipe. So again, that's shift with the backslash. But in this case, that's not what's being used. But if you needed to use it, you could. So, and now we'll just have to do the advanced again because it wiped that out. So we'll go to advanced. Actually, it kept it. First name. There we go. So by applying it, it reset it. So sorry, I hope that wasn't confusing. I just wanted to demonstrate that you could indeed put in a different delimiter, but this delimiter is fine. So we click on next, no error message, import to table, all EE table, finish. Now, sometimes what happens if there's a mistake, you'll get a pop-up here that says there were fields that could not be, there were records that could not be imported. And what it does, it creates a second table here, or another table, I should say, that contains those errors. That did not happen, so we're just fine. But I just want you to know that you could, for some reason, have a conversion error, and you would have a separate table here showing you what couldn't be converted. Like it would show you a record, I believe, for every record that could not be converted, and it would say about what the field name was. So if we open this up, there we go. Chris and Claire have been added. Barry as well. Barry wasn't here before. So if we come back to our document, Barry, Claire, Chris, and sure enough, they're all there. So even though this does not match this, because we clicked on that advanced button and we added the underscores, we're able to modify this to match this, and then it could properly map it. I hope that I'm not beating a dead horse, but I just really want you to know that you're not stuck, that if your source document, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or a text file, if the naming doesn't match, you can fix that as you're doing the import, okay? So now we've got a little bit more information here to put into a report. And again, it's not going to ask you to save when you've entered data. Data is automatically saved. It only asks you to save if you've modified like a structural aspect. So the width or the name or the format. So notice, see, did not ask me to save. Your data is automatically saved. So now what we're going to do, we don't want so much the table to be the source of the report. You could, but generally speaking, you're probably going to use a query because you don't want to see everything within a table. You want to see a subset. There's something that you're looking for. So you're looking for all records created by a certain person, or all records that are incomplete, or all records that are, over a transaction over a certain amount, whatever you're looking for. Okay. So the other thing I want to mention too is this is for you, the database manager, to use. You don't want your end users to use this. As I said, we're going to hide the ribbon. Again, the ribbon is what this upper set of tools are called. You're going to hide the ribbon. You're going to hide the panel here so is that the end user does not have access to those administrative tools. And if you want them to be able to import data, in a later video, I will show you how to import data using Visual Basic. We're going to create something known as a module, specifically a class module, and that module is VB code that has a single line that says, I believe the actual command is transfer spreadsheet, and you say whether you're importing or exporting, so it'd be an import, and you're going to import that information into the table. I already have a separate video that shows that, so if you search my channel, I believe I actually put transfer spreadsheet into the name of the video. You will find that, but if you want, I can do an updated version of that. So again, you're not going to have your end users use this. This is for you, the database admin. Your end users would have a customized import that you are going to create using a form with some Visual Basic code that lets them import in a very controlled environment. Okay. So now we have that new information here. So now we'll create a report because it won't just be 2 records. Okay. So what do? Well, we click on create, and just as we did before, we saw create table, we saw create blank form. We're going to now click on blank report. Once again, a database object can be viewed in multiple ways. One, the way it would appear to the end users, or its design mode. So you can click on view and you can go to design view. Okay. Now this looks a lot like the form, but unlike the form, this isn't quite what you see is what you get. Because this space here gets repeated for every single record. So say I put the employee name here. You'll get employee name with all the space and then the next employee name with all this space. So whereas the form is basically what you see is what you get, this really isn't what you see, what you get. This is what you see is what you get per record. Okay. You also have to be mindful of things like page header. This would show up just once per page. So this is where you'd put your labels for the most part. You would have a separate report header if you want. Page footers where you'd probably put your totals. That way it doesn't get repeated over and over again. So you'll see in a few minutes, but this detail section, this gets repeated every single record. So for the most part, you don't want labels in here. You don't want totals in here. You want this to be just the record. Okay. So what do? Well, we go to design like we did for the other database objects. We click on property sheet. Okay. And again, the report as a whole is selected. That's what that dot means, because you could look at the properties of the header. You could look at the properties of detail. You could look at the properties of the individual controls. We're just going to look at the properties of the report as a whole. So we don't have to worry about navigation because, again, this isn't a form. This is a report. But what we're going to do, we're going to click on data, and we do have to choose a record source. So if we click on the drop-down arrow, this is one of the first times that we actually have multiple choices. So we don't want it to be the table because we won't want to see all the records in the table. We want to have the results of our report. So what we're going to do right now, first we made a query. Then we made a form to control that query, to put the criteria into the query. Now we're going to have the results of that query be put into a report. So essentially, the end user will see the form and then the report once it's created. What they won't see ever is that construct, that object known as a query. The results will be displayed in a report. They won't actually see the query. I know I keep saying that, but it's very important to understand you don't want your end users having access to those objects, that you want to hide everything away behind the user interface, and the user interface is made using forms, and in this case, a report. So we have chosen that EE query will be the data source, and the criteria, so what that query outputs, will be predicated upon what is entered in the EE reporting form. So again, you're going from a form to a query to a report. You're creating this kind of daisy chain of functionality. Okay, so we said EE query. Now, because we've done that, just like with the other objects, we now have access to the fields within that query. So what we can do is we can just take all those fields. So this again is just a shift click, drag and drop, and we can start putting this into the report. But again, I'm going to show you this the wrong way very briefly, just so you get why you need to do this. So again, I'm moving that up just using the arrow key because I selected everything. So this is going to look terrible, but it will demonstrate how this isn't really what you see is what you get. This is what you see is what you get per record. So we're going to save this. We're going to call this EE underscore reporting, but we'll call it RPT for report. EE underscore reporting underscore RPT. And now what happens is when we close this, what we want to do, we have to change something. So right now, EE reporting form runs a query. Well, we don't really want to run the query now, do we? No, we want to run the form, which will display the query results, which means we have to change the way this works. So if we go to view, we go to design view, and we're going to select this. We go to property sheet, event. See how it says on click? This was created when that wizard ran, because when we first created this command, it automatically created a wizard. It opened up the wizard and created functionality based on our answers. Well, it put it here on click. Okay. So what we're going to do, let's just delete that, and let's actually delete the button just so we can go through that process again. So we're going to click on the button. So we're in the control section, design tab, we click on the button, left click, drag, and again, we get the pop-up message, we click on open. Now in this case, we want to run a report. So report operators, and we're just going to call it open report. Next, this report we just created. Next, text, open report, gives you a preview over here. Next, We can call this run underscore report, although there might be multiple reports, so you might want to give more information. Let's call this run EE underscore report. Finish. And now it says open report. So now over here, see how it says embedded macro? We've created a new macro. If we click on the little ellipsis, this is a macro. And so it's like I said in the first video, I believe, it's not really code, it's more steps, and you're kind of linking these steps together. So it's telling you it's opening a report, what kind of view, what kind of window mode, that kind of thing. I'm just going to click on close since we didn't make any changes. It already got saved once we saved the wizard. And just like before, that's the caption, and you can change that either by highlighting it there, or if I can find it, caption is right here, open report. So you can change it either here or just by typing right on it. And we'll just make that a little bit bigger, not that it matters. Again, not here for aesthetics. I have no sense of aesthetics. I've said that probably half a dozen times. But the aesthetics have really no functional impact either. So if I have not missed anything, I believe that will now let us go from the form to the report, because in the form, we choose the criteria. The criteria gets transmitted to the query. The query is the data source for the report, and then the report opens. So if I didn't miss anything, this should work. But again, the report is going to look really weird. So I saved it. Click on, let's do active. So this should have everyone but Wesker, and we click on open report. And sure enough, so there's Jill. I'm just scrolling with the scroll wheel. There's Barry. There's Claire. There's Chris. Perfect. It did not include Wesker because Wesker is the only person who is not active. So if we close this and we change this to termed, he's the only one there. So see how messy that looks? So you're getting this repeated for every single record. You're getting that space for every single record. So I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. It's just very important to understand that it's only sort of what you see is what you get. It's what you see is what you get per record. So let's go ahead and fix that now that I've talked so much about that. So we're going to open up that report. Oops, sorry. We need to go into design view. So I right clicked and chose design view, which is the same as doing this when you're navigating here. So you can just right click on the object. Okay, so first of all, we don't want all this space. So if you point at the top, you'll see that little indicator. Now we don't get all that extra space. There's still too much space, but we need to do something first. What we're going to do, you can either break these away from these, or you can just delete them and create a new label, 6 one way, 1/2 dozen the other. So what we do is we'll click up here, we'll click on label, so not text box. Again, you need to differentiate between them. This is just the label, so it's not linking to any data. We draw that out here, and actually let's make this a little bit bigger at the top. Again, I'm just pointing at the edge. And I got to create a new label because it automatically deleted the other one because I didn't type in it. And we'll call this employee first name. Again, you can use spaces here because this is just a label. This is not the name of the field. You have not changed the name of the field. It is still EE underscore first name. You can increase the size of this so data does not get clipped off. But again, even if this field is too small, you're not losing data. It's just clipping it visually. So we can move this one up, and then you can do the same thing. If you want, you could just copy this one and paste it. Why? That way you know it's the same size, but if you don't really care about size, then it's not a big deal. Although selecting it is a bit of a nuisance. And you would change this to employee last name. Can expand this out. Again, changing the size, you're pointing at one of the control dots on the borders or the corners. You can paste again. You can call this employee status. And as you can see, the form isn't going to be wide enough. So you can just point at the edge of the form. I think excuse me, the report, not the form. The report isn't going to be wide enough. So just like the form, you can point at the edge and just left click and extend that out. And you can move these. So if you don't want to change the size, you just want to relocate. Remember, you point at an edge rather than one of the dots. You can just move it like that. Status can stay small. EE hire date, we'll move this one up. EE term date, we'll move this one up. And EE street address, we'll move this one up. And in fact, we'll widen the report out a little bit more and extend this because street addresses probably easily could go out to 50 or so characters. So I'll extend that out. And now we can decrease the size even more. Again, it's pointing at the top. It changes the simple changes. You just left click and move up. Now I'm going to run this again, even though it's not quite right, but you'll see the difference. So we save this. We close this. And again, it's this kind of cascading of information, the form to the query to the report. So I have to open up the form, which runs the query. Well, technically it opens the report, but the query runs based on what I selected. See how that looks much better? You don't get this repeated because it's at the top of the page. You don't have that unnecessary space. Okay. Now there's other things you can do. Depending how long this video is, I might do it in this video, but you can get rid of things like these boxes. Okay, and you can also set it so it can't be edited and things like that. But you can see this already looks much, much cleaner. So again, think of it as what you see is what you get per record. Close that, close that. I suppose I could have just gone into edit mode, design view rather. I said edit mode, design view. And now it's just continue to rinse and repeat. We copy, we paste, we move. And let's see, this is, I suppose we don't have to keep saying employee. We can call this hire date. We've already reinforced that it's in the employee. And typically a hire date inherently suggests it's an employee function. It's an employee related field. We'll copy this one. For whatever reason, when you copy and paste, it does not retain the location. In some applications it does, and this just pops it into the upper left corner. So copy and pasting can be a little bit annoying. And we'll call this term date. And we'll paste one more time. And we'll call this employee street address 1. Depends on the institution you work for, or if it's your own company. But a lot of times the first line is literally address line 1, address line 2, but then city and state are referred to as city and state. Whatever naming convention works wherever you are. So if we save this one more time, then we can't view because we really need to use the form to set the criteria. So EE reporting, active, open report, and now isn't that beautiful? So it was very messy the first time intentionally. Now it looks much better. So you only have the label repeated once per page. You don't have the extra space between records. And again, you can do things like hide the box. Let's quickly do that. And then I think that'll be about it for this video. So again, multiple ways to do things, but you can select the object, and then as you can see, you have the different views here. So design view. So if we click on this, I believe this would be format, Border style solid. So let's make that transparent and see how that looks. We'll do it just for this first one. We'll save it, close it, EE reporting, active, open report, and there you go. You got rid of the box. So now you can just rinse and repeat. So right click, design view, and then we'll click on the next one, format, border style. Whoops, not border style, sorry. So the object is selected, and okay, sorry about that. I was wondering why I didn't see it. For some reason, it didn't look like it updated correctly. So border style transparent, click on this one. For some reason, it's not updating per object, and I'm not quite sure why. Border style transparent, transparent, transparent. And now we save this, close it. Like I said, Access can be a bit glitchy. Let's see how that looks. I think I missed one. So EE reporting, active, open report. Yeah, so we just need to keep going. So for some reason, it wasn't updating the selection, and I'm not sure why. So design view, and so the double click. So that one's transparent. Double click. That one needs to be transparent. Double click. That one needs to be transparent. We'll save it. E-report. Active. Open report. There we go. So we got all those borders taken care of. So my apology, a little glitch. For some reason, selecting the object wasn't updating what was selected. It was still showing the previous control that was selected. And that cleared it up. Okay, so I think that's about it. Again, you can just keep building on this. Like you could make these bold, you can make them underscore. We already showed you how to do that. So that would be, if you click on this and then you go to format, you've got the same tools just like you did for any other label. So the other forms, this is a report, but in the forms, we looked at changing a label, changing the size. It's exactly the same thing. It's the same type of control. It's a label, so you could make this bold, you could make this underlined, that kind of thing. Bold, underline, bold, underline, bold, underline, bold, underline, and bold, underline. Okay, so I think that's about it for this video. I hope you found this useful. And again, I don't normally ask, but I am on this series. I'm trying to get away from the old Microsoft Access videos that I posted back in 2016. The audio wasn't very great, but the bulk of the views to my channel are from those. So if we can get enough activity on these videos, I can delete those once and for all. But if I delete those right now, then my channel will basically cease to exist because all the metrics are associated with that old series, and that's still the top driver of my channel. So I'd really like to get rid of those. That way you guys don't have to endure the poor audio, the reduced confidence. And so if possible, please like the video. Please leave a comment of anything you would like to see. As I've described in the name, I'm taking a cram session approach. So basically, maybe it's the end of the semester and you need to learn this stuff fast, then this is a good tool for you. So leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe if you find that to be appropriate. And if we can get enough activity on these videos, then I can finally delete the old ones, and and YouTube will stop recommending those. So as far as the comment, let me know something you want to see. So far we've looked at really the core functionality. We've looked at creating tables. We've looked at creating uh, reports, we've looked at creating queries, and we've looked at using the UI to create a user interface, forms to create a user interface, okay? So there's more advanced stuff we can do, like I've mentioned modules, so we could use modules for certain functionality, and we can do other things as well, like I've mentioned using drop-down boxes, um, uh, combo boxes to link to a table, so I think maybe I'll do that in the next video, and I'll probably start working on another form. So what we'll do is we'll create a table of maybe products, okay? And then what we'll do is those products will link to a drop-down box, and then the drop-down box will be used to create a new record. So that'd be a little bit different than what we've done up to this point. So you've got one table in a read state, so you'd have a drop-down box reading from one table while the form writes to another table. So that is a different approach. So you get more complexity because right now the forms are going one direction or the other. They're either reading or they're writing. In that example, it'd read from one table and write to another. Okay. So I think that's about it for this video. Again, I hope you found this video helpful and please enjoy the rest of your day. And that should about do it.